And we are live. I'm here with my new friend Benjamin. Benjamin, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Should I call you Ben or Benji? Benjamin?
You can call me. I usually go by Ben,
Okay,
but I don't mind being called Benjamin. It's fine.
Ben's easier.
Yeah.
So I'm in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, but I got a Toronto Blue Jays shirt. I just got it at a garage sale yesterday. Whereabouts are you? You in the States?
I'm in upstate New York.
Oh, not far.
Not too far, no. A
Yeah,
couple hours from the border.
yeah. Okay, cool. So look like you live in a nice little rustic. What would you call that? Like,
It's a log house. Yeah, I don't know what you would call.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Country style. Country style.
sure. Yeah.
That's the technical word for it. So before we dive into Catholicism and all that sort of stuff, I don't actually know much about you. So for myself and my a few listeners, take us back to early childhood. How were you raised? What kind of religious atmosphere was there? Philosophies and stuff. And
Sure.
talk us all the way up till today and how you got to be where you are today and what you believe today and all that stuff.
Right. Okay. Well, so I was born about 50 miles from where I live now in a little, I'm grew up in a little town in upstate New York. Lived on a dirt road as a kid. We didn't even have a stoplight in our town. That's about how big it is. Okay. Um, my parents were Catholic, and I was baptized in the village church as an infant. But a few years later, when I was about 4 or 5 years old, my parents left the church, and I grew up attending different, a few different, I guess you'd call them evangelical, kind of non-denominationally type churches, but primarily the Assemblies of God, which is a Pentecostal denomination. Um, so I grew up in that kind of very intense Protestant religious atmosphere. Um, and when I was around 13 or 14, I found an old Latin English hand missal in my grandmother's attic. And she said, and I'm, I'm I don't know. I might have been 12. I might have been 13. I might have been 14. I don't remember exactly. But I was like, oh, well, this looks cool. It's in Latin, and there's, these illustrations, kind of medievally looking thing. And that appealed to me as I was into Robin Hood and, all that sort of stuff as a boy. She said, well, then why don't you just keep that book? Go take it home with you. So I like devoured this thing because, it had artwork, it had all this stuff that I didn't have in my sort of Pentecostal experience. And I remember reading like through the canon of the Mass, which is in the Novus Ordo would be Eucharistic Prayer 1. It's the only Eucharistic prayer in the traditional Mass. I remember reading through it and being like, well, this is clearly Christian. All they need to do is put the Mass into English, and all the Protestants we'll heal the rift here, right? You know, uh, anyway, so yeah, I was interested in Catholicism. I didn't really talk to my parents about this because I didn't know why they left the church. I wasn't sure, but anything I could get my hands on about Catholicism, I would read.
Oops, you flipped sideways.
Oh, I got a call coming in. I'm going to decline this for the moment. Okay. Yeah. And then as I went through, so I was interested in Catholicism. I just kind of, it made sense to me, the things I read about it. But I didn't know why my parents left the church. And so I didn't tell them about it. And so I waited. And as I went through adolescence and through high school, I got into a lot of what you call sinful behaviors of different sorts, partying and, all the sort of normal stuff that most teenage kids do. And when I got to be 18 and was out of high school, then I said, okay, because I didn't know why they left the church. I didn't know if they'd kick me out or what would happen, but I said, okay, I want to become Catholic, I think. So I was going to trade school. I went to trade school right after high school, and I'd come home on the weekend. I'd go to mass with one of my grandmothers, either my grandparents on my dad's side or my grandmother on my mom's side. And my parents were fine with it. It wasn't really an issue for them. But I still had a certain amount of uncertainty, and I would go to the college library, and every evening, because I didn't really know anybody the first semester I was in college either. So I would go and I would just read through the religion section and examine just everything. I mean, I read the Quran, I read books about different Christian denominations, I read about Hinduism, etc., Buddhism, like everything I could read. And eventually I entered RCIA, and it didn't go very well. The people running it didn't do a very good job. It ended up falling apart before Easter happened. The whole class fell apart. And I said, well, what did I do? And well, you'll have to wait till next year. And I said, you want me to wait a whole another year to enter? I'm 20 years old, right? You've got a young man interested in entering your church who's receptive, so my grandparents kind of intervened and talked to the priest and said, look, you're going to lose him if you don't do something. So I had private instruction with the priest after that. And then after meeting with me about 4 times, he said, well, you've already read an enormous amount of things, and you are better catechized than most of my parishioners. So I'm going to receive you in the church this weekend, and I'll hear your confession now if you're ready. And I'm like, well, I'm not ready. Can you give me 30 minutes? So that's kind of the story of how I ended up in the church.
And then he handed you his Roman collar, and then you became the priest, right?
No.
Didn't go quite that far.
It didn't go quite that far. So I'm 43. I was 20 when I entered the church. So in the time since then, I did think about the priesthood for a while, but I knew that I had, converts enthusiasm, and I didn't want to, so I waited, and then I ended up meeting the woman who's now my wife, and so I never really, I guess I wish I would have discerned I think if I was going to give advice to a young man, I would say, yeah, discern the priesthood if you think you're interested, because there's no reason not to. If you're not to be a priest, then you're going to find out. But so once I got into the church, of course, it's not perfect. There's all sorts of things that aren't quite right? We're all human, and including the guys running the church. So I'm in the Diocese of Rochester, New York, which at that time was very what's the word to use? Progressive bishop. Of course, I believed everything the church teaches at this point, and my journey into the church was started by reading an old old liturgical text, right? So this was difficult. I was young. I didn't really know other Catholics my age. I go to mass. Everybody's got gray hair, and yeah, and they want felt banners and tambourines and all that sort of thing. So a lot of difficulty through that period of time for me, and not a lot of support. So at some point I discovered that the mass that I'd read about in the book, that I'd read through in the book, the old missal, still existed, and I ended up traveling a couple hours away and experiencing it for the first time and being like, well, yeah, this is what I've been looking for. That was before 2007, which is when Pope Benedict sort of lifted all the restrictions on the old mass. Yeah, so I had a great interest in liturgy and also music. And to try to kind of sum this up or not ramble too much here, some people in my parish ended up putting together a small choir to sing Gregorian chant in the Novus Ordo Mass in our parish. And after a couple of years, I was asked to lead that for some reason that I still don't understand. So I did that for a number of years, and eventually we had a few visiting priests come in and say the traditional Mass in our parish, but it was never a regular thing. And we more traditional minded people at that time weren't really appreciated by a lot of the leadership in the parish, but we were tolerated. And I guess so to bring it up to today, well, I should add, there was a period of time in there where I kind of struggled with the question of, did I choose the wrong communion? Like, is Eastern Orthodoxy true? Was I wrong about that? Was I wrong to become Catholic instead of Orthodox? And I kind of worked through all that, and it was a difficult period of time as well, but I came out stronger in my faith, and I'm Catholic, and I have no questions about that I'm in the right place now. And then over the last several years, in my local parish, we've had a couple of younger priests assigned to us, and the liturgy at our Novus Ordo Mass has become much more traditional, and a lot of the things that used to really irritate me and bother me, a lot of that's not a problem anymore. So at least in my local experience here. So I'm married. My wife is a cradle Catholic, and not, kind of a lukewarm nominal Catholic when I married her. During COVID, I told her to try to pray the rosary every day, and she decided to do that. And now she's more devout than I am, probably. It's kind of funny.
Wow.
And we have 3 children, and I guess that's
Cool. Good summary. Good summary. Do you have any siblings?
I have 2 younger sisters.
What's the story faith-wise?
They're both believing Christians, kind of non-denominational or evangelical type.
Your folks. Like
my folks, yeah.
Your folks still alive?
Yes.
They're happy with you. Everything's cool.
They're happy with me. Everything's cool. My dad was reconciled to the church a few years after I entered, but he's since kind of lapsed back into Pentecostalism in the last couple of years. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's kind of a little disappointing for me, but
Yeah, well, some people aren't like you and I are intellectual about,
yeah.
we have questions, we get answers, we're happy with the answers, and we're satisfied. Other
Hmm.
people are emotional. Oh, I'm not
Yep.
being fed here, I'm not being fed there, and it's just
That's
like, that's it.
that's exactly it with him. Yeah. Yeah.
That's so I'm very happy. There are downsides to being too much in your head, but there are upsides too. And one of
Hmm.
the upsides is we know. We
Right.
know. We asked the questions and we got the answers and we're happy with the answers, and it's just it's not going anywhere. Those answers aren't going anywhere. Nothing's going to change. There will not be women priests. There will not be we're not going to
Right.
have we're not going to celebrate any sexual perversion ever. Individual members of the hierarchy might choose to do that, but we know they're wrong. To condone sin of any kind is wrong. So you and I, we know, we have the answers, we know what the church is, and we're sad when we see people contradicting it, especially in the hierarchy, but that's that's their problem, you know what I mean? We have to pray for them, and
Right.
Christ said there will be weeds among the wheat, and don't uproot the weeds. Don't uproot them. Let them grow. So that's what's happening. And the wolves among the sheep, wolves in sheep's clothing. That's just the way it is. We know that's the way it is, and we do what they say officially, not what they do. And we say we do what they say officially. We don't do just everything that they say because they contradict each other. You know what I mean? The people in the hierarchy are contradicting themselves and each other. So we go to the church. We look to the church. So yeah, I had a monk who was on his way to becoming a priest that gave me private instruction for RCIA. So it was a very good experience. And I knew I was anti-Catholic before I came into the church, so I knew all the dirt. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's like that was not a problem for me. As soon as I could see that there was a baby in the disgusting bathwater, it's like, wow, that's where your
Right.
focus is at that point, because you already knew about the bathwater. You already knew about
Right.
that. Yeah. So, what do you think about the FSSP? Because we have a branch here in Montreal, and they helped me during COVID when they shut down all the churches everywhere, and I got kicked out of a church for not being vaxxed and stuff like that. And I was
Uh,
actually physically assaulted for not being vaxxed, and then the
uh,
FSSP took me in, even though it was like we were not allowed to have the sacraments, but they kind of secretly fandangled it.
yeah. I'm a big fan of the FSSP. Yeah, Fraternal Society of St. Peter.
Yeah.
Uh, I've only once been to one of their masses, but it was fantastic. And confessions before, during, and so I got both confession during that experience, and was at their mass. And yeah, I'm a big fan. I've supported them sort of financially for years. I send them like $5-10 a month. Um, the closest one to here is in Scranton, which is
Ohio.
like Pennsylvania. It's like 3 miles away, or three hours drive, maybe 3.5 hours drive. Um, yeah, I've only been to one of their masses. Yeah, I support. I'm a fan of their work. So yeah.
Yeah, well, it's the best of both worlds because you got like all the traditional stuff, and they're faithful to the living magisterium. Like to me, I will take faithfulness to the living magisterium above some fancy old school liturgy any day of the week. I really don't care that much about if it's an old school liturgy. I really don't care. But I need to have a religious order or whatever the society is. It has to be loyal to the Pope and the ecumenical councils and all that sort of thing. It's a deal breaker for me. Like I'm not going to go to the SSPX or anything like that ever, never.
Okay.
Until they get reconciled. I mean, they seem to be moving in that direction.
Yeah, the SSPX question is, I mean, they have faculties from Rome, so to speak, for confessions. I mean, it's kind of a gray area for me. Like, if I needed sacraments and I couldn't get them,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I don't really have a problem receiving from
yeah.
the SSPX.
Have you?
But I've attended one of their masses. But most of my traditional mass experience has been in the context of diocesan TLMs, like the vast majority of it. And I've sung at them, I've directed music at them, I've served mass at those. So I'm not really connected with the SSPX
Yeah.
or the FSSP or any of the orders. And since the what is it? The Traditionis Custodes sort of thing that happened 2 years ago. It hasn't affected anything in my diocese yet, but I'm not near a diocesan TLM either. So yeah, it's kind of a. I was for a period of time. I had some connection with and with the Franciscan Friars of the Immaculate.
Mm.
If you're familiar with them.
Well, I'm only familiar with the Franciscans generally. I mean,
Okay. Yeah, but yeah, that's a whole kind of messy conversation situation.
Oh yeah.
They were kind of sort of suppressed like a month or two into Pope Francis's pontificate. So,
Oh really? Why?
yeah. Crypto-Lefebvreanism
Okay.
is
Okay.
the charge.
Oh really? Oh yeah.
Whatever
Okay.
that means. And
Okay.
I don't really understand. Yeah. They celebrated both forms of the Mass, and I didn't really see any rebellion against the hierarchy in them or anything like that. So I don't know what that means, but yeah.
Well, a lot of it's
The,
a lot of it's inside baseball, like behind the scenes politics that we'll never see.
A lot of people say it was about money,
Yeah.
and yeah, and the guy put in charge of them was I think a conventional Franciscan at the time.
Okay.
The guy who was like they pulled their whatever their head person was out and put this guy in, and they like broke away from the conventional Franciscans back in the. It was like one of these after Vatican II, we're going back to the sources sort of orders.
Okay.
So they wear gray instead of brown, and
Okay.
But I don't know. They were great as far as I don't know. I don't know enough about the inside baseball of what really is going on that I feel comfortable talking about them. But I have nothing but good to say about them. But yeah.
Yeah. So what's your take on? Well, I have a lot of questions to ask you that are sort of like controversial because I just booked. I believe it or not, I just booked Father James Martin to come on my podcast.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well,
so I'm really excited.
Him some hard questions.
Yeah,
too.
I'm really excited. I'm really excited to meet him because I've heard so much trash talk about him, so much, and I have avoided since I converted in 2009 to Catholicism. I've avoided, like the plague, anyone that has any hint of suspicion of unorthodoxy, anything. I just avoid them. So I don't know him. I don't know what he's teaching. I don't know anything, and I don't want to know. I don't want to lift that rock. I just say if he's gone astray, God help him, that sort of thing. I just pray for him, whatever. But now I'm going to meet him, and I've got all my friends who are kind of on the right who are saying, well, you should ask him this, you should ask him that, and I'm like, well, I have to respect him, and I have to, we're supposed to be doing an interview about his upcoming book, and I can't just I'd love to, just do a Spanish Inquisition on him, but I can't, you know what I mean? So I'm excited to meet him and get a vibe, just get a vibe.
Yeah.
Does he admit to suffering from same-sex attraction or no?
As far as I'm aware, he does not admit to it. Of course, a lot of us suspect based on the things he says and does that he's. I mean, it's like. Here's the thing. Well, okay, I'll give my own. Look, if somebody has same-sex attraction, then they have same-sex attraction. It's like if somebody's addicted to something, they're addicted to something. It's an objectively sinful behavior, but I'm all for reaching out to people who are wounded and trying to bring Christ to them and all that. The issue with James Martin, to me, well, to put it simply, he doesn't seem to affirm the church's teaching that acts of sodomy are sinful. And when pressed on this, he'll say things like, I've seen him write this, or I don't know if he said it verbally. I remember seeing this. I acknowledge the church's teaching, he said at one point, a number of years ago, on homosexuality. I acknowledge. Well, acknowledgement isn't acceptance. It's like a slippery speech thing, right? It's trying to sound like you're doing one thing. It's trying to have your fish and eat it too. You know what I mean?
Is that the Catholic way of saying, "Oh, and have your cake and eat it too"? Have your fish and eat it too.
Oh yeah, I was thinking of like, taxidermy, and well, your choice is to eat the fish or to have it
Stuff
on the wall. But yeah, I guess it's probably possible to do both. But you get what I'm saying, though.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. It's the slippery language and all the ambiguity and all these sorts of things. But
yeah.
I'm in a very tense situation. I have a lot of internal tension. As a Catholic, I have a lot of internal tension because the office of Pope is so high and so glorious to me. I'm an ultramontanist. I'm all about the Pope, and yet, okay. This Pope has been trashed so badly by people on the right, and some people on the left too, but because he's not left enough for the people on the left. So I've heard that, believe it or not. But anyway, I want to give the maximum benefit of the doubt to Pope Francis. I want to give the maximum benefit of the doubt to people like Father James Martin, and the proximity that seems to be there, the friendliness that seems to be there between the Vicar of Christ and this controversial Father James Martin. It makes me, honestly, it makes me really want to give Father James Martin even more benefit of the doubt because he's so close, apparently, with Pope Francis. Now, a lot of people on the right, politically, in the church, like conservative Catholics or whatever, or radtrads, they openly hate Pope Francis. They openly hate Father James Martin, and I don't think that's Christian. So, I mean, you and I are probably a bit closer when it comes to trying to maintain the tension, like where we respect the office and we love the person, we love the sinner, and we just hate the sin, and we don't like hypocrisy and lies and wolves in sheep clothing, obviously, right? But how do you have any advice for me in terms of how to relieve some of the internal tension I have? And can you sympathize with my love for the office of the papacy and my love for my fellow man, whether they're hypocrites or not?
I can sympathize with your love for the office of the papacy and your love for the sinful men in various positions everywhere on earth, including ourselves. I can't really give you advice on how to reconcile sort of some of these difficulties because I struggle with them myself. Pope Francis has said and done a number of things that are, I'll say it, what's the word to use? Problematic for me. When he called, what was her name? Some Italian abortionist. What was it he said? Yeah,
he was praising an abortionist.
Yeah, he praised Emma. I can't remember her name. Yeah.
Was she part of the Pontifical Academy of the Sciences or something like that?
No, I don't think so. Well, we'll put that aside because I can't remember the names and so forth. But like his recent appointment to the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith, like that's a problematic thing for me. This guy's. He wrote a book about kissing. This sounds really creepy and weird. And he recently said, we can't take the Bible seriously on what it says about homosexuality because we would have to make women veil then as a result. We'd have to take that seriously too. I'm like, what? This guy's strange. And you just appointed him in charge of the doctrine for the church. And yeah, so I have my own sort of difficulties here with Pope Francis in particular. Like now to kind of give, I don't know, I wouldn't probably describe myself as being very, very, ultramontanistic. I mean, popes. So the way I think of things, and so, I mean, so within the church's kind of definition on papal authority, there's sort of some breadth, right? Like there's kind of a spectrum from like super papalistic to moderate. Like you have to believe what the church has defined about the office, and I do. But it sounds to me like you're more on the more strongly papalistic end of that.
The reason I call myself an ultramontanist is because that's what some of the rad trads have called me, and I just embraced it. But the emphasis that I place is not so much on, oh no, everything he says is true and we have to follow everything he says. No, like, I mean, Pope Francis was pushing the jab. I hate the jab. I didn't get the jab. I'm never going to get the jab.
Yeah.
Pope Francis is pushing other stuff like evolution. I don't believe in evolution. It's nonsense. So I don't agree with the Pope, and I'm not going to like just follow him like a blind sheep.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of reverence for the office. And I think that it's a mystical thing where God is using the Pope, the Vicar of Christ, to accomplish something. It's a mystical thing where it's like everyone's just complaining about the Pope. What I'm doing is I'm saying, well, I wonder how God is using Pope Francis, because I think a lot of people are missing out on an opportunity to say, well, what is God doing with Pope Francis? Now, a lot of the people on the right say, well, God's just punishing us with Pope Francis. That's all he's doing. He's punishing us, trying to confuse us and punish us. I don't think so. I think that the God that I worship is doing a lot of really good stuff with Pope Francis, and we have to try to figure out what it might be. Now, what I take away from Pope Francis is he's nice, he's warm, he's like progressive and, soft and loving, and the dignity of the person and these sorts of things, and, welcoming, and he wants to embrace everyone. And, maybe in terms of good cop, bad cop, he's like good cop, So I think, okay, let's take that. That's what God's giving me. And so that's the emphasis. It's not so much about following blindly. It's more about just loving and seeing a mystical thing, like God's offering me something here, and I don't want to miss the opportunity.
Yeah, okay. I guess in my mind, it's if the Pope gives us a legitimate command, we have to obey.
Yeah.
So, as much as I love the Latin Mass, the old Mass, I mean, if he outright banned it completely, it would cause me an immense amount of emotional pain and stuff. But I guess that means that I have to give it up. What would I do personally? I don't know. I might. I'd probably go to the Ukrainian church down the road, which is Eastern, right? But but yeah,
there are always options. There will always be traditional masses.
Yeah.
Always. It's not going away. It's not going away. I think what the Vatican wants to do is they want to finally, once and for all, start implementing Vatican II. I think that's what they want to do. That's why they're pushing for it. And I think there's a little bit of a war against the right and against the rad trads. And maybe there's some good reason for that. Maybe the right is doing some stuff that's not good.
Yeah, I don't know. The percentage of Catholics that, like, what's the right? I mean, the percentage of Catholics that go to the old Mass is like tiny. And
yeah, but they're very vocal online. If you go online, if you look at any online Catholic stuff, they're very, very vocal. The right-wing Catholics are very, very vocal. They're very pushy, and they're very, very negative. They're hateful. I'm sorry, but go to LifeSite News, look at the comments. Go to Church Militant, look at the comments. Go to any of these like, that stupid guy, Marshall, Taylor Marshall. Look at his comments. Like, I mean, he himself says some good stuff sometimes. You know, like when Pope Francis was in the hospital, he's praying for him and being nice to him and stuff like that. But look at the comments. Like, these people are rabid wolves in sheep's clothing. Like, these are like hateful people. They're anti-Catholic Catholics.
Yeah, it's easy. Yeah, there is a tendency towards negativity. It's easy to get into that. I've been there myself. You know, I've been nasty myself at times. Some of these people, well, okay, back up a minute. So the older sort of trads tend to be very bitter, and I can tell you, having been on the receiving end of negativity for simply wanting traditional things and being crapped on for it, and in real life by the first Latin Mass we had at my Novus Ordo parish, which was about 11 years ago, the deacon who was there at the time, like these two ladies who were about my age, went in to ask for this, you know, well, we have a priest who's willing to come in and do this, and he's willing to bring servers and everything necessary. And Pope Benedict says you have to let us do it. This guy flipped out and was screaming at them. There was literally spit flying out of his mouth, and things like that. I've been on the receiving end, and I know, humanly speaking, it's easy to get us versus them, and to downward spiral and just like go completely black pill. And I guess what I'm saying is I understand what you're saying about the negativity spiral and the purity spiral. There's definitely a toxic purity spiral in the trad world. That's why people end up becoming not just sedevacanists, but like some of those sedevacanists won't receive sacraments, or whether or not they're valid sacraments, I don't know, but from other sedevacanists because they're not pure enough. You know what I'm saying? So on the one hand, I actually have a certain amount of sympathy for these people that are like in the black pill down negative spiral, because I understand where they're at. But yeah, it's not good. It doesn't look good, and it is destructive. So I'll agree with you there. I'm sorry, what were we talking about before?
Well, we know we're just generally talking about the state of corruption in the church, and on the left, on the right, and you know, my thing is, you know, I've always had a sort of disinterested love of the truth, and it applies when I became Catholic too. It's just like, I know what the church teaches. I got my little handy dandy books that tell me what the church teaches. It's very clear, you know, and if there's anything that's not clear, then hey, I got some wiggle room. Like I can, you know, I could believe this or that, and it's always inconsequential. Like, was Saint Joseph bodily assumed into heaven? Well, I choose to believe he was, but if you choose to believe he wasn't, that's fine. That's the kind of stuff I'm left with at the end of the day with wiggle room. It's like, who cares? You know, I will always err on the side of what is most pious and what gives most glory to God, or Jesus, or Mary, or Joseph, or the saints, or whatever. I will always err on the side of give more glory, pile it on, you know. And I don't see why a Catholic would do otherwise. Like, for example, when people say that we're revering Mary too much, it's like, well, we can't revere her too much. I mean, so go for it. You know, if you read The Glories of Mary by St. Alphonsus Liguori, you know how far he goes. He goes very, very far, to the point of saying that he would believe that she is a god if the church didn't tell her that she's not. You know, that, I mean, he's using some hyperbole here, but that's the way I like to go. I like to go, how far can we go? Like, pile on the praise and the glory and the reverence for God and his saints and the church. You know, like I went to Mass this morning and I said, I believe in the Catholic Church. It's an act of faith. I believe in the Catholic Church, you know. But you can respond to that. But then I want to change gears a little bit and talk about the Pentecostal thing. What have you brought with you, and what is this whole Trentecostal thing, and how does that all play out?
So I don't remember where I first heard the term Trentecostal, but I think it's meant to mean basically glad trad, like
Oh, okay.
gonna
Okay.
avoid just the spiraling negativity and just love the tradition.
Yeah.
But because of my Pentecostal background, I kind of grabbed onto that and was like, okay, yeah. Although, what have I retained from my Pentecostal background? Not much. Like, I'm a pretty introverted person, and a lot of that Pentecostal stuff did not appeal to me. It made me very uncomfortable. You have to wave your arms in the air and get all
What
emotionally worked up.
what
And
do you think about the charismatic Catholics? Like, there's one here in Canada. I'll remember his name, but what do you think about them generally?
so the individuals, I love them because
Yeah.
they're usually very and that whole movement in the 70s was like all this change happened, and they're the ones that actually believed in the supernatural, when everybody else was kind of going progressive or whatever you know what I mean.
Modernist, yeah.
Modernist. Everybody else was going modernist. Oh, we're discarding all that medieval stuff. They were like, oh well, we still believe that God does stuff. So the ones I know personally, they're great people. I love them. They're enthusiastic, but really, to me, it's like it's just it's adoption of certain Protestant spirituality, and I don't really. I'm kind of allergic to it, to be honest. Like, I don't ever want to hear praise and worship music again, but I will. But um, and to be frank, like a lot of the speaking in tongues and all these sort of alleged supernatural things, I really don't believe that most of them are legitimate. I believe a lot of it's just emotional, the effects of psychological effects of like a strong emotional state. And like most people that claim to be speaking in tongues, I don't personally believe that they really are doing something supernatural.
What about when they roll on the floor and laugh and bark like a dog? Is that from
Yeah,
God? Is
I
that
really
from
don't
God?
like that. I really don't like that. Now, even as a Pentecostal, when I was a Pentecostal, my Pentecostal minister said to us in his youth group, there are three forms of these manifestations. They're either from God, they're deceptive, like fake. He warned us about pushers. He called them the fake ones that push you over.
Uh,
Uh, uh, they're either fake, they're real and from God, or they're demonic. And he was against the barking like a dog stuff and all that, which was associated with, what was it, Toronto
Toronto
Airport,
Airport,
something?
exactly. I was going to ask you about
He
that
was
exactly.
really against that stuff. So even before I was out of the Pentecostal thing, I was kind of warned about that stuff.
Who
He
are
was the opinion that it was
yeah,
demonic because
yeah,
it's animals,
yeah,
and it's reducing you to an animal-like behavior.
yeah. Who are some of the household names that like your parents and siblings might look up to in terms of Pentecostal, evangelical, whatever they are?
So my parents, like, we didn't really follow the any like televangelists or
No.
anybody like that that was big. But in that time period, it would have been like Jimmy Swaggart.
Okay.
I remember one guy at our church was really into Benny Hinn, who we didn't have cable television when I was a kid. Actually, we didn't have television at all for certain portions of my childhood. So yeah, like big names, there were like Jimmy Swaggart would be the big name in Pentecostalism and the Assemblies of God in that time period.
Okay.
Um, Yeah.
Have you heard of Father Mark Goring up in Ottawa, Canada?
Yeah. Yeah.
He's
I
pretty
like
cool.
Father Mark
He's
Goring. Yeah.
cool. He's cool. Yeah. I asked him onto my onto my podcast, but he said he's too busy. That's too
Okay.
bad. But yeah,
Yeah.
I really like him. Um, what about some of your favorite Catholic saints? You know, obviously there's the Blessed Virgin Mary. If you want to say something about her, but we've heard it all before. But
All right.
who are the other saints you admire?
Yeah. So the Blessed Virgin Mary, I totally consecrated myself to her.
Which
Um,
consecration did you do?
the Montfort's
Yeah,
consecration.
yeah,
I renewed it this year.
nice.
I don't renew it every year like I'm supposed to, but I did do it this year. Um, I wear the Miraculous Medal and the Brown Scapular. Big fan of hers. Huge. Yeah. Pray the Rosary, everybody, every day. Do it. Just do it. Okay, so yeah, I won't give the whole spiel, but yeah, Mary, Mary, Mary. Saint Joseph is my confirmation saint.
Nice.
Because I went to trade school right after high school, and I did work as a carpenter for a while.
Oh.
But
Did you build your house?
I did not build my house. This is this is the house my wife grew up in.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we kind of inherited this, and
Wow.
yeah, her house burnt down when she was like 5 or 6, and they rebuilt. They built this, and it's in the same place. So,
Cool.
and her mother, after her father died, her mother remarried and moved away, and it sat here empty. And finally, they were like, "Well, you can have it if you want it." And we're like, "Well, we're not going to say no to that." So, yeah. So Saint Joseph. I need to get to be more friendly with him and get to know him better. But yeah, my relationship with him has been a little more loose and casual than maybe. Since I chose him as my confirmation saint, I should probably talk to him more often.
He's used, I think he's used. I suspect he's used to being neglected.
Yeah, living in the shadows, right? Poor guy. Poor guy.
Well, it's like me and my wife. Like when we go to a party, it's all about my wife. Everyone's attracted to my wife. They talk to my wife, and I'm just, oh, you're Anna's husband. Oh, interesting. Is your
Who
wife an
else?
introvert or is she extroverted?
Halfway,
Mixed,
halfway in
mixed,
between, I guess.
mixed. Yeah.
She's social, but she's fairly introverted. She's not. I guess she's introverted, but not shy. Whereas
Okay.
I'm more shy.
Ask her to come and talk to me for sure, because I always ask my guys to ask their wives to come on, and only
Okay.
so far only 2 or 3 guests have actually managed to get their wives on. But
All right,
at least
ask
try.
her.
Ask her. Yeah, ask her.
Yeah, so she's on her way back from Steubenville with my oldest son right
Oh,
now.
no way.
They had the youth conference this weekend.
So your kids are into the faith.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Ah,
Yeah. My daughter had her first communion on the Feast of Corpus Christi this spring, and she was enrolled in the Brown Scapular this morning.
ah.
Yeah. We have devotions every evening.
Wow.
Read a little bit of the Bible. They eat that up. We try not to force them to do, like, for a while, I was like, we got to make them say the rosary. And my wife's like, no, don't do that. Because the older, a lot of the people, adults that we're friends with, were made to pray the rosary as children, forced to. Took them a while to willingly do it as adults, or they still kind of have an aversion to it. So
Yeah.
I think she's right. Like, lead, but don't push. It's hard.
Yeah.
Um,
So we got Mary and Joseph. What other saints you got?
well, I like de Montfort.
Yeah.
His book on the rosary is fantastic.
Yeah.
I like Padre Pio.
Yeah.
He's kind of gruff, right? So, but sometimes you got to be told stuff that you don't want to hear. So, okay.
Has he written a lot of stuff that I can read, Padre Pio?
So there's a book of his letters to his spiritual director
Oh, who was his spiritual director? Priest?
Do you mind if I walk here? I'll
Yeah,
go
yeah.
see if I can find the.
Yeah.
It's here somewhere.
I get a tour of your ceilings.
Get a tour of my ceilings. No, that's oh yeah, St. Francis de Sales. That's the
Oh,
introduction of devout life. So I love
oh,
St. Francis de
yeah,
Sales.
yeah.
Um,
Are you at your bookshelf now?
yeah, I'm at one of my many bookshelves. I don't know where it is.
Well, just read me the titles that you're scanning over there.
Okay, so I got Walter Sizek's With God in America, which I've not read, but I did read his With God in Russia. I highly recommend. If he becomes a saint, he'll be on my saint list for
Cool.
sure. Do you know about him?
No.
He was a Jesuit priest who went into the Soviet Union in like the late 1920s, got caught, was in the gulags for like 30 years, illegally saying mass in the gulags and hearing confessions. And then he got out, but because he was arrested as a spy, he wasn't allowed to move from town to town freely. But they kept moving him from town to town because every place he went, he'd start acting as a priest while, he'd go work in the factory during the day and go say
Very cool.
divine liturgy. He was, he could say either the Eastern or Latin liturgies. And then finally the U.S. government made a trade and got him out of there.
Nice.
But he really remarkable life story.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know where my Padre Pio book is about that, but not seeing it here right now. But yeah, Padre Pio there is a book of his letters to a spiritual director and that out there somewhere. I can't remember the title right now.
Yeah.
So
cool. Very cool. That's fun.
Well, what else would you like to know?
Well, what's your prayer life like? I mean, in terms of your own personal prayer life where you don't involve other family members, what do you do?
Yeah, I get up usually before everybody else. Although I've been slipping on that lately. Most of for the last number of years, I have been getting up earlier than everyone else. I usually start the coffee and pray 3 Hail Marys, and then consecrate myself to her, like a short consecration of myself to her that day. It's the my Queen, my Lady, I dedicate myself to you, and to show my devotion to you, I consecrate to thee this day my eyes, my ears, my heart, my mind, my mouth, my whole being without reserve. Wherefore, good mothers, I am thine own. Keep me and guard me as thy property and possession. And then I'll have some various different changes, but prayers to Jesus and lifting up various family members and friends and needs in the world. Sometimes I'll read a little bit of scripture. And then I'll pray throughout the day. I'll put a decade of the rosary in here and there. It's spread it throughout the day. And then, of course, we have our family prayers in the evening before the children go to bed. And occasionally, I'll pray the Office of Compline, although not consistently, occasionally before bed with my wife. So.
And what about mealtime? Do you have a quickie prayer for before and after meals?
Yes, at least at dinner time. We don't usually say grace during lunch or breakfast. Well, I don't eat breakfast usually myself, but yeah, we usually have just basic grace before.
It's
meals.
Always the same. Is it the same fixed prayer every dinner?
Yes, yeah. It's
what
the
is
Bless us, O Lord.
Yeah.
Bless us, O Lord.
And
these are gifts. That one. Yeah. Yeah. And inspired by some friends, been adding and for the souls of the faithful departed to that at grace time. So that's most of the time. Certain times of year, I'll, bump it up, like during Advent and especially during Lent.
Yeah.
I didn't this year, but the 2 years previous, I did the Exodus 90 thing.
Okay.
You're familiar with that?
I heard about it. Remind me what it is.
It's a pretty intense thing. It's like 90 days before Easter. You have a fraternity of other guys you get together with once a week.
In real life?
So, in real life, yeah. So you'll get some guys in your parish, like a handful of guys, and everybody's got a buddy, and you got to check in with your buddy every day, and it's pretty intense. It's like cold showers.
I can't do that.
Yeah, cold showers. You got to do like an hour of prayer every day. There's like a reflection and meditation that's a canned thing. Trying to remember what else. Yeah, it's like
fasting.
Yeah, there's no eating between meals. No meat on Wednesdays or Fridays. I'm trying to remember now from memory exactly what it's about. So it's like fraternity, prayer, and fasting. I think are the three pillars, if I remember right.
Okay.
And yeah, you're gonna fail at it.
Okay.
Like everybody does. Like nobody does it perfectly, which is a wonderful humility builder.
Yeah.
And you gotta own up too. Like you get together with the guys and you're like, okay, yeah, I didn't do this or I didn't do that So it's good. I don't know. I'm not going to do it again. I've done it twice. Pretty sure I'm not going to do it again because what I don't like about it is it's kind of feels like a commercialized thing to me. And I don't like that.
It's overpackaged.
Yeah.
Too self-conscious.
But like taking penances seriously and also having support from other guys and talking about serious things with them is been a really is the thing about it that's really great.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. Have you read the Philokalia?
I've read parts of it. One of my favorite spiritual books is The Spiritual Combat by Lorenzo Scapulli.
Okay, done.
And there's some connection between that and the Philokalia. I don't remember what that was. But the Philo. Yeah, I've read parts of it. I haven't read the whole thing. I don't have a copy of the Philokalia. I do love the Jesus Prayer, but I haven't used it consistently all the time.
Do you have a habit of doing spontaneous, like what they call ejaculatory prayers? I love you, thank you, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Jesus, when does that come out?
Jesus mercy. During temptations, during like if frustrations, intense sort of okay, so the last 2 weeks we were on vacation out west, and it's kind of funny. Out west there's a lot of canyons and things you have to drive through, and I'm a little bit afraid of heights, so so those kind of came on pretty strong and out loud at certain portions of our journey last. But yeah, anytime I'm concerned about anything, certainly in temptations, if I think once I realize that I'm being tempted with something, the nice thing about those is they're Lord have mercy is usually what I use, but you don't have to think about it, you can just pull it out, right?
Did you read St. Francis de Sales on the Sign of the Cross little booklet?
Oh, is it a separate booklet?
It's a little book. It's a book. I don't know. It's
I
not that
don't
big.
think I have.
It's
I don't
pretty
think I have.
cool. It's pretty cool. I love the sign of the cross, and he just talks about how powerful it is chasing the demons away and stuff like that. So I'll just do the sign of the cross, like, you know, with the intention, like, against temptation, or if there's something demonic happening. There's a lot of demonic stuff happening, right? Just protection. But also as just a sign of love and gratitude, these sorts of things. Just like you could do the sign of the cross without any words, no thought, just sort of this feeling like love you, thank you, help me, whatever. It's just like that's my favorite prayer, is when I'm not thinking, I'm not in my head, I'm not saying, oh, this is a good prayer, I'm going to say this, I'm going to say that. It's like, just shut up and pray. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're an introvert, so I'm sure you can relate.
I can totally relate. Yeah.
Just that silent, just the gesture. That's what I love about the Catholic Church. We have so many things that are just organically integrated into our human nature, body and soul, and it's just it's so real
Mm-hmm.
and organic. What was your most exciting episode of the Sacrament of Reconciliation? Maybe you were scared to go in, you had, didn't set something you didn't want to say, but you had to say it, or where you had a burden that you were relieved of a big burden, like maybe it was your first confession, maybe it was just some random one, or maybe you did a general confession. Just talk about the power of the sacrament.
So I love confession. It's absolutely fantastic. I didn't mention this yet, but my wife and I ran our CIA this past year.
Oh.
And I'm not going to get into all the details, but because the person quit, I ended up becoming the coordinator of religious education in my parish for the last 6 months, but begging them to hire someone to replace me because I don't want to do that. But so I had a lot of experience telling people how to go to confession and what to not to be afraid of, not to not be afraid of it, and how wonderful it is in the last year. And it really is. Like, I hate going in the sense that I hate going in, but
you love coming out.
I love coming out. No, it's tremendously freeing and healing by definition. One particular moment, though, it's hard to say. My first confession wasn't great.
Yeah, me too.
Because that was the whole, I'll hear your confession now in the rectory living room. So it was kind of more like, I've done it all. Here's my attempt at rattling off all the stuff I can think of. But most confessions, you're in line and the priest doesn't get that into things. But I've had a few confessions where with certain priests who were really skilled at really getting in there and scrubbing and why do you, and they ask you all these questions, and what are you going to do different, and how are you going to change, and you think about that, and those are really, really good. Painful sometimes, I have to actually try to deal with the underlying causes of dysfunctions in your life, right? But I love confession.
What's the biggest penance you ever got? Because I got one where I did say this long prayer every day for a month.
So there's this one priest I go to who tends to give me 2-week long penances.
Are you serious?
Yeah, like regularly, like it's medicinal. Like I confessed like anger and hatred and rage once, and he's like, okay, for the next 2 weeks, every time you're like start to get irritated with somebody or you think of somebody, you have to say, God bless them or whoever they are. So it was great. Really medicinal, really helped. But it was not pleasant, right? God bless so-and-so,
Bless you.
He also, there was another time the same priest gave me the penance of every day, every morning, ask God to do something to make you humble. That was brutal. Like, for 2 weeks I got to get humiliated once a day. Like, and things would, and I don't know if this is just me reading into it, but things would happen. Like I would do some boneheaded, embarrassing thing and realize it later, and but
Wow, that's heavy.
But other than that, let's see, biggest penance. No, I think that'd be that.
Those are pretty big. Those are pretty big.
Are pretty big, yeah.
Yeah. What about virtue? Do you make a studied attempt to increase your virtue and decrease your vice? Like, do you have a favorite virtue that you'd really like? If you could pick one, like that you could sort of hit a magic button and get that one, which one would you choose? That kind of thing.
Well, I tend to be a little bit short-tempered.
Are you a redhead?
No, I'm blonde. So redheaded adjacent, I guess. Yeah, a little bit Irish.
So you want to have patience?
Patience is the contrary virtue, right? So, yeah, I'm not that patient. But yeah. Yeah.
Let's say the 7 deadly sins. Which one are you not so worried about because you don't really indulge in it that much? Vanity or envy, greed, lust or sloth or gluttony, wrath. You already told me that wrath is one that you're.
Wrath is probably my primary thing. I haven't done any spiritual direction, but I think that wrath is my primary vice.
Which one are you least worried about?
I mean, I don't think I'm anything special. So
you're not vain.
I don't think vanity is an issue for me. My hair's falling out and whatever. Yeah. So I'm not. I don't think that's a problem for me.
You're not too worried about it. Yeah.
Not too worried about that. But yeah, probably yeah. I say wrath, but at one period in my life, it might have been connected more with envy because it's like, those people over there, blaming them for my issue, I don't think that's a problem for me now, but I can see like maybe when I was younger, like in my 20s and maybe struggling to get on my feet and figure out what I should be doing with my life, and then jealous of people who had plenty of money and so forth. I can see how that might have been a bigger vice at one point, but yeah, I don't know.
What about the bagpipes? How did you discover them, and what can you tell me about them as an instrument? It seems like a weird instrument.
Weird instrument. Oh, I like weird instruments. I like bagpipes. I like hurdy-gurdies. I like portative organs. Well, when I was a kid and we'd have a parade, I always loved the bagpipe. I love the sound of the bagpipes. Like, basically, I love anything that's got a drone in it, like Byzantine chant, hurdy-gurdies, bagpipes. Didgeridoos are cool, yeah. And I wanted to play the bagpipes at some point in my teens, and I got into that for a little while, and fell out of it. And when my daughter was born, she's 8, I said, okay, I'm getting older. I better do this. If I'm going to do this, it's like I shouldn't wait any longer. Should have done this earlier. So yeah, I've been back into playing the pipes for the last 8 years now.
Is it just one thing?
So there are 4 reeds. So you have a blowpipe that
Yeah.
has a valve on it, so it doesn't
Yeah.
blow back into your mouth.
Yeah.
You have the bag, which is just an air reservoir. And then you have the chanter, it's called, which you play the melody on.
Okay.
And it has a double reed, like an oboe reed, similar to it, like an oboe reed, two reeds. And then there are 3 drones.
And you don't touch them. You don't have to touch them.
You don't touch, well, you got to get them in tune.
Oh yeah.
Which I wish most pipers, there's a lot of pipers. So the primary, we call it A, but it's not really A. It's
The key of A, right?
the sort of bass note of the chanter, and then you tune the. You have 2 tenor drones, which are an octave below that.
Okay.
What we're calling A, but it's closer to B flat, or it's between B flat and. It's a little sharper than B flat these days. So your 2 tenor drones are an octave below the primary note of your chanter, and then you have a bass drone, which is an octave below that. And and there's only 9 notes. How hard can it be, right?
Is there anything that you can't play? It's impossible to play it?
There's a lot of things you can't play. So, like, if you're doing a gig, like, you'll get people requesting things that can't be played on the pipes at all. You have 9 notes. You have, it's an oddball scale.
What scale is it? Do you know?
So it's not. It's. Let me think. So if you were going to put it into, okay, so that's low G, A, B. I want to say C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G, high A is the scale. That's nominal though, because like I said, it's not 466 or whatever the standard is today. It's what we call A is actually like 478 or so these days. Hertz. I don't know if you got a musical background, but
not much.
Yeah,
Just a
keyboard and
smattering. I got a smattering of a little bit of knowledge. I studied piano and violin as a child, and it's a mild hobby of mine, like doing experimental electronic music. But I'm not like a talented musician or anything.
So it's kind of a modal. Well, let's put it this way. There's a couple different types of music that are traditional for the instrument. There's the big music and the small music. And the small music is your marches, your jigs, your reels, your Strathspeys. The marches, of course, are what most people are familiar with. And then there's the big music, which is like the classical music for the Great Highland Bagpipe, which is called Pibroch or Kelmore, which means the big music. And that's what I actually love these days playing. It's there's like a bass melody that's kind of slow.
Yeah.
And then there's variations. So then the next variation will be that melody. Usually it's like that melody stripped down to just like the structural pitches.
Okay.
And then with embellishments and decorating it, it gets more and more and more complex. So you get up to what's called the Crunlowith movement. And then it goes back and repeats the ground or the original melody. And
can you send me a link to like your favorite, like if I'm going to listen to any of the big stuff, this is
sure.
the one.
I'll find something and send it to you so you can see.
Do you get tears in your eyes listening to some of this stuff?
Yeah.
That's what I like. That's what I like, because it's the magic of music. It's like, why am I moved by this melody? It's just a melody. It's just a melody, and there's timbre, there's texture, whatever, but why? So I love that. It's magical, man. And there's something, God is in control of everything. He's the creator of everything, including the beauty of music. Like he's
right. Well, it's a form of order, and within music you have chaos and order going back and forth between it. You have dissonance. You create tension.
Yeah.
you create tension in the mind of the person, and then you bring that to resolution, and it's a beautiful thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
yeah.
amazing. So I just had a guest on, one of my heroes in music, from a prog rock band from the 70s called Gnitterlog. And I was talking to him about this. The reason I love not all prog rock from the 70s, but a lot of it, is because there's this chaos and tension, and it gets resolved, and it's like addictive, and it's, like any genre of music, bad prog is bad, but I mean the good stuff, the stuff that I like, I really really like. And the other thing about prog rock from the early 70s in Britain is that there were so many talented musicians that were experimenting freely and openly and trying new things with jazz, with classical, and a lot of these people were classically trained or jazz trained. And it's no joke, having this sort of education like this, are the high level skills, right?
Mm-hmm.
So are you in the classical music sort of mindset?
So it's interesting. I don't really listen to classical music.
No, but when
I
you
don't
buy,
listen-
when you buy, like, you're going to send me a link. If I went to the record store, would it be in the classical section, or what section would it be in?
I don't know what section
The bagpipe
purebred
section?
stuff.
Is it in the
They would
bagpipe section?
they would probably put it in like the world music section or the folk section.
Uh,
But this particular genre of bagpipe music I'm talking about is not the typical. They would just lump it in, right?
okay.
But it's not the typical, like the jigs and the reels and stuff belongs in the ethnic or the folk
Folk.
genre. But this stuff, it's like, it does have like parallels to like classical music, which has like a theme and like variations, right? So yeah, I don't know.
Do you like Bach?
I do like Bach. Yeah, I don't listen to a lot of classical music, but I do like classical music.
Yeah.
It's interesting because of my involvement with church music and Gregorian chant. I interact with a lot of educated musicians, and I
Yeah.
usually don't tell them that I play the bagpipes because there's a stigma and a bias and assumptions, which some people have. But I've then occasionally been delightfully surprised when people find out, and they were, educated people found out and were like, oh yeah, that's interesting. And,
So apparently it's a Turkish thing. The Turks and the Greeks had bagpipes first. Can you confirm or deny that?
I believe that's probably true. I mean, it's an extremely ancient instrument, and there are hundreds of different types of bagpipe in existence. Yes.
What's a nice pair of bagpipes going to set me back if I want to go buy a set?
Oh, $1,500. Yeah. Don't buy the $200 and $300 ones off Amazon. Those are
Crap.
made in Pakistan and non-functioning.
Unless you just want to hang it on your wall, like buy it
Right.
and hang it on your wall.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much what those are good for. I would know. My first set was made in Asia set, and yeah, that was a disappointment.
Crap. You just reminded me of a question. Okay. Do you need a lot of air, like lung power, or no?
I wouldn't say you need any more lung power than you would need for any other wind instrument.
Okay. But you do need that much wind power. Like a friend of mine actually blew out his lungs playing my trumpet. I used to play trumpet a little bit.
Okay.
And he blew out his lungs trying to play a trumpet because he didn't know how to do it properly.
Okay.
He had a collapsed lung.
You do need to know how to blow from your diaphragm and have enough lung power to blow a typical wind instrument. You need to set the instrument up for you.
Okay. You
need to set the strength of the reeds for you and the size of the bag for you. Somebody's 5'2" and somebody else is 6'4". It's the length of your blowpipe and all that. Like, you have to set the instrument up for you to fit you. But you can set up a bagpipe for a 12-year-old girl to play, and that's not She doesn't have the same physical abilities as a 6'4", burly man.
What
right?
percentage of your time, if it's an active tune, like you're playing, what percentage of your time is spent refilling the bag? Are you constantly refilling the bag? Can you take a break and not fill the bag for a little while, even though you're playing notes?
You can take, you blow into the bag, and then you rest and breathe. So you're kind of, in a sense, constantly blowing into the bag, but
chill pace.
It's at a relaxed pace, yeah. And you're resting your lips in between. That's something that you learn to play the tunes on something called a practice chanter, which is just a small, like a
recorder.
Like, it's kind of like a recorder. It's
Oh, okay. Nice.
And
cool.
So with that, you have to blow constantly, but that's so that you're not trying to manage this octopus while you're learning the tune and practicing your embellishments with your fingers and all that. Now with that, your lips will get tired because you're kind of constantly got to blow. But with the actual pipes, that bag is an air reservoir. And actually, when you get to the end of a tune, you have to stop blowing so that when you stop, it stops instead of going and howling and sounding awful. Right? So.
Are there any top 40 popular songs that incorporate bagpipe? Like, not necessarily today, maybe in the 80s or whatever, but something you can think of.
Oh, who is that guy? Glenn Campbell used to do something. I don't remember who. It wasn't somebody. Okay. It's not somebody I listened to.
Here we got a little list. Candles by Rufus Wainwright. Come Talk to Me by Peter Gabriel. Dead by Korn. Going Down the Road by Roy Wood. It's a Long Way to the Top by AC/DC. No way.
Yes.
No way. Love Travels. Yeah, go ahead.
Angus, is that his name, from AC/DC? Did play pipes.
Oh, we got Kate Bush, Night of the Swallow. I'd like to hear that. The White Stripes, The Animals, U2, Tomorrow. I should check these out. Right Said Fred, You're My Mate. Interesting. I should check out some of those songs. I wonder how obvious it is. I guess it's kind of hard to ignore the bagpipes. If they're bagpipes playing, you're going to hear them, right?
Yeah, I think you'll hear them if you're listening for them. Collaboration is kind of hard. You have to get a chanter that's in concert B flat, so that you can work with standard and other instruments. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, because of competition. So it is a competition instrument. We have competitions. I do compete. Over time, because if you play an instrument that's slightly sharper,
sounds better.
Right after somebody else, it sounds a little bit better. It tricks the ear into sounding, it's a little brighter.
Yeah.
And so over the course of the last 30 years, we've moved from concert B flat up to my phone has only got 20.
We'll wrap it up. We'll wrap it up here. But very cool to meet you. And don't forget to ask your wife to come on and talk to me. I want to hear her side of the story, hear about her faith journey and all that sort of stuff. Sure, and pray for me and mine. Ask you to pray for me and mine. That's part of the reason I do the podcast. And I enroll each and every guest in a perpetual mass, so you and your family get in the graces of the mass every day.
Thank you very much.
Until the end of time. So what I ask in return is just to pray for me and mine, okay?
Okay, sure thing.
Thank you so much. And you could do what I do is with a lot of when people ask me to pray for them, I'll do on the spot, I'll just do a little prayer. But then I'll ask the Blessed Virgin Mary to add that person to my implicit prayer list, so that all the prayers I'm doing all the time, some graces go to those people. So it's like a set it and forget it thing. So you can do that. I think I value that. Like, if you want to set me up on your list just with the Blessed Virgin Mary, add me to the list.
Sure, I'll do that. Have you heard of, Father Chad Rippinger talks about spiritual contracts that you can make,
Cool.
where
I like
where
him.
like you tell your like you tell your guardian angel,
Yeah.
now listen, every time I say a Hail Mary, could you also add this on?
Yeah. Cool.
I haven't done it, but you just made me think of that.
Yeah. Well, we should start doing that. We should start doing
Yeah.
that. And next time, if you come back, I hope you come back. I hope I don't piss you off.
No.
Because I'm just joking. Because your wrath thing, you said you get angry, hot-blooded Irish guy. I did notice though when we first met, I'm like, wow, this guy's very serious. You have a serious demeanor. You do have a serious demeanor, but I get to know you. I see you're warm and you're
Well, I
fun.
relax a little once I've talked
You're
to you
fun.
for a few minutes,
You're
a
fun.
little bit. And,
But next time, if we do talk again, it'd be fun to talk about indulgences and how you make use of indulgences and stuff like that.
sure.
And different aspects of this, like, I mean, like this perpetual mass thing, like it's like a life hack, right? And all these different life hacks that we have as Catholics. And, you know, a lot of the time people think I'm too soft on my guests. Like if there's some crazy worldview, they think I'm too soft on them. But I think it was Saint Monica, Saint Augustine's mother, who said, it's better to have a stern talk with God about the sinner than to have a stern talk to the sinner about God. So that's kind of the approach that I've taken. It's like we could be friendly to the Satanist and then behind their back, like doing all kinds of prayers and stuff. That's more my approach rather than chastising them, you know.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, look, I have no problem. You can ask me I don't have a problem being asked difficult questions. Like, you don't need to be afraid. Like, I'm not going to get offended. Like,
No. Yeah. I was just joking. I know you're a nice, sweet guy, and that comes across, that comes through. But I like, you know, people often ask me like, what's your favorite kind of guest or whatever, but I always say the same thing. I like the introverts because they're thoughtful. You know, they think about stuff.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And you're interactive. Like, I mean, I can ask you a question, you give me the answer, and that leads to another thing. And some people, like some extroverts, no offense to the extroverts, but some of them, they just want to like say their sort of script, like they got the script and they got this pattern where they just do their thing and they say their stuff, and it's not as interactive as someone who's mixed or that's introverted. No offense to the extroverts, I love you too. But we all have our strengths and weaknesses, just like I was talking earlier about how some of the Protestants or some people who have this thing, I want to be fed and move around and all this sort of thing.
Right. Yeah, well, we need both sides of all the stuff. And,
Yeah.
it all goes together into a big, beautiful, cohesive whole at the end of the day. And
Yeah, when I first converted, my main concern, and it's still a concern today, my main concern was to connect the head with the heart, because I know the heart is where it's at. The heart is where it's at. For the Christian, the heart's where it's at. So, you know, it's still a project. You know, it's still my project. Like, can I connect the two? And, you know, of course, my wife helps me with that because she's very intuitive. She's in her heart and she has intuition. I don't know if you've noticed this about women, but they're very, very intuitive.
Yes.
Puts us to shame. So, very nice to meet you. I'm very happy to get to talk to you and take good care of yourself and your family there, your beautiful family. And we'll probably see each other on Twitter.
Okay.
All right?
All right. Yeah, sure.
Thanks a lot, Ben.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Take good care. We'll talk soon.
Thanks.
God bless. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.